Introduction: The mystery of cognitive dissonance. The cognitive dissonance experiment, conducted by social psychologist Leon Festinger in 1959, marked an important step in understanding how individuals cope with the internal discomfort caused by the contradiction between beliefs or views. This groundbreaking study uncovered a key mechanism of the human psyche: the tendency to rationalize one's actions and alter perceptions of reality in order to reduce the psychological tension that arises when conflicting thoughts or beliefs collide. Cognitive dissonance is not just a scientific term, but a fundamental process in psychology that explains why we often justify our decisions, actions, or beliefs, even when they contradict objective reality. Festinger's research provided a scientific explanation of how people find ways to reconcile contradictions in their perceptions and behaviors, striving for psychological harmony and inner comfort. During the course of Festinger's experiment, it became clear that human consciousness does not passively accept the world, but actively alters its beliefs in order to maintain internal consistency. This phenomenon, which has become widely recognized in psychology, influences our decisions, daily actions, and even deeper changes in our worldviews and personal beliefs. Festinger's experiment laid the foundation for further research and became a crucial tool for understanding the processes that shape our behavior and perception of the world. Methodology: How cognitive dissonance was created. Festinger's experiment was brilliantly simple, yet profoundly effective. Participants were asked to perform a monotonous and tedious task, such as repeatedly turning wooden pegs or rearranging objects. These actions had no real purpose and quickly became tiresome, leaving participants with a sense of futility and boredom. After completing the task, the participants were divided into two groups. One group was offered a modest reward for their participation, while the other received a more significant sum. After the task was completed, each participant was asked to tell the next person that the task had been exciting and interesting, even though in reality it was repetitive and did not evoke positive feelings. This key moment became the catalyst for cognitive dissonance. Participants who received the larger sum could justify their lie by citing the material reward, which made it worthwhile to tell a half-truth. However, those who received the smaller reward had no clear justification for their lie, and this created an internal conflict. The brain began searching for ways to minimize this dissonance, leading to interesting and significant results that Festinger and his team closely examined as part of the experiment. The methodology of the experiment was designed to create exactly the type of psychological tension that forced participants to alter their perception of the task in order to reduce the level of internal conflict. The impact of this experiment on the study of perception psychology and motivation has been profound and remains relevant for decades. Creating dissonance: the perception conflict. In order to induce cognitive dissonance, Festinger's researchers deliberately created a contradiction between the participants' actions and their perception of the task. Participants who received the small reward were faced with an internal conflict. They had to claim that the task was interesting, despite its boredom and monotony. This act contradicted their own beliefs, creating psychological tension. Those who received only a modest reward found it difficult to justify their lie. This created a significant psychological contradiction. They could admit that the task was uninteresting, but in that case, their actions, working for a small reward, and their beliefs that the task was dull and tedious, would not align. To reduce this tension, they began altering their perception of the task, convincing themselves that it was useful or even engaging. This process was key in the study of cognitive dissonance, as it demonstrated how even in situations where no external justification for actions is available, people tend to seek ways to reduce internal conflict, often by changing their beliefs. This explains why people sometimes convince themselves they gained something valuable, even when objectively they did not. Thus, the human brain prefers to adjust its perception of a situation rather than admit that a mistake was made or an illogical choice was made. This self-defense mechanism of the psyche, which underpins cognitive dissonance, is central to many everyday decisions and is a crucial part of our psycho-emotional experience. Observations: How we change perception to relieve dissonance. Festinger and his colleagues closely examined how participants dealt with the emerging cognitive dissonance. uncovering surprising results that radically changed our understanding of the human psyche. Participants, confronted with the internal conflict between their actions and beliefs, began actively altering their views to reduce psychological discomfort. What was most striking was that participants who received a minimal reward for lying about the dull task did not acknowledge their behavior as insincere. Instead, they began convincing themselves that the task was actually interesting or valuable. This process was unconscious yet remarkably effective. People experiencing cognitive dissonance tend to alter their perception of reality to align it with their actions, maintaining internal harmony. Festinger emphasized in his research that humans do not simply seek the truth, but actively change their beliefs to align them with their behavior. This supports his conclusion that cognitive dissonance serves as a powerful mechanism for maintaining psychological comfort, even if it requires distorting objective reality. This perception adjustment process plays a crucial role in our daily experiences. For example, a person who made a poor purchase may start convincing themselves that the item was necessary despite its lack of real value. Similarly, when people remain in unsatisfactory relationships or jobs, they begin to find justifications to avoid internal conflict, even if reality contradicts their beliefs. In these situations, their perception of reality shifts to prevent the unpleasant consequences of admitting mistakes. Considering Festinger's observations provides a deeper understanding of how cognitive dissonance not only helps alleviate stress and tension, but also drives individuals to actively reshape their reality. This mechanism becomes an integral part of our thinking and behavior, playing a decisive role in decision-making, self-esteem maintenance, and adaptation to external conditions. Thus, cognitive dissonance becomes not just a psychological phenomenon, but an essential tool for protecting oneself from internal conflict. We do not passively accept the world, but actively reconstruct our perceptions to preserve a balance between our beliefs and actions, sometimes even leading to profound changes in our understanding of reality. Rationalization and justification: how we justify our actions. The process of rationalization observed in Festinger's experiment demonstrates how people actively seek ways to justify their actions, even when they contradict their initial beliefs or expectations. When participants who received a minimal reward were asked to claim that the boring task was interesting, their minds began to look for ways to reduce the internal tension and explain their behavior. One of the most prominent mechanisms participants used to justify their actions was redirecting attention to personal qualities, such as interest or ability. They began to perceive their activity as a manifestation of their own passion or skills, rather than a forced lie for the sake of a reward. This allowed them to convince themselves that their actions had intrinsic value, rather than being simply the result of external compensation. Rationalization became a way for participants to overcome cognitive dissonance by creating a new, more comfortable view of reality. They devalued the importance of the reward, convincing themselves that they found something valuable and useful in the task, even if it did not align with their original expectations. This unconscious shift in perception allowed them to reduce the psychological discomfort caused by their actions. This rationalization mechanism is not limited to laboratory conditions, but is also prevalent in daily life. People often resort to justifications to explain their decisions and actions. For example, when purchasing an expensive item, a person might convince themselves it was necessary, even if in reality it wasn't. Similarly, harmful habits or unhealthy relationships are justified when individuals find reasons to stay in situations despite their obvious flaws. Rationalization is a powerful tool that helps us maintain inner harmony without confronting uncomfortable truth. This phenomenon not only explains behavior in specific situations, but also reveals a deeper mechanism through which we preserve our psychological stability. It allows us to maintain our self-esteem and confidence in our decisions, regardless of how objectively they can be justified. Consequences: how cognitive dissonance affects behavior and decision-making. Festinger's cognitive dissonance experiment revealed important aspects of human behavior that have profound implications for understanding how we make decisions and interact with the world. One of the key takeaways was the realization that humans strive to maintain cognitive consistency, even if this requires changes in their beliefs or perceptions of reality. This drive for internal harmony is so deeply rooted in the human psyche that people are willing to distort facts and adapt their views to avoid experiencing internal contradictions. The results of Festinger's experiment had significant practical consequences, especially in fields like marketing, manipulation, persuasion, and social psychology. Understanding how cognitive dissonance works allows professionals in these areas to effectively influence people, guiding them toward specific actions and decisions. For example, in marketing, strategies are often employed that create cognitive dissonance situations, prompting consumers to justify their purchases. This can be achieved by enhancing the perceived value of a product that may not actually be necessary or rational. In politics and public discourse, the principles of cognitive dissonance are also applied. Politicians, for instance, use persuasive messaging to minimize contradictions in how the world is perceived, focusing attention on facts or arguments that confirm their views and ideas. This strengthens biases and solidifies their position, even in the face of counter-arguments. Moreover, in social psychology, the study of cognitive dissonance offers deeper insights into the mechanisms behind belief change and decision-making. People tend to seek confirmation of their beliefs and avoid information that causes discomfort. This explains why many people often ignore or reject evidence that contradicts their views, even when that evidence is objective and logical. It is also worth noting that cognitive dissonance plays a significant role in shaping group identities and norms. In societies or groups, there may be pressure on members to adopt certain views or beliefs, even if these ideas contradict personal values. This pressure fosters collective cognitive consistency, where each group member adapts their behavior and beliefs to maintain overall harmony. Thus, the study of cognitive dissonance has not only theoretical significance, but also a wide range of practical applications. Understanding how we rationalize our beliefs and actions can be used to more effectively manage human behavior, whether in business, politics, or daily life. Practical application of cognitive dissonance. Influence on everyday decisions and beliefs. Cognitive dissonance has a significant impact on everyday life, influencing decisions, changing relationships, and even causing deeper shifts in beliefs and worldviews. This psychological mechanism explains why people often prefer to maintain existing beliefs, even when faced with contradictory information, and why they may ultimately change their views to eliminate the discomfort caused by dissonance. One of the most prominent manifestations of cognitive dissonance is how people often lean towards changes in their beliefs or behaviors when doing so helps alleviate internal discomfort. For example, when an individual is presented with information that contradicts their views or actions, they might initially reject it or find ways to minimize its importance. However, if the conflict becomes too strong, the person may begin adapting their beliefs to reduce the psychological tension caused by the contradiction. On a personal level, this can manifest in various situations. For instance, a person who has smoked for years despite knowing the health risks might justify the habit by convincing themselves that the harm is exaggerated, or that it is their personal right to choose. Over time, if confronted with stronger evidence of the harm, they might begin to change their behavior or views to resolve the dissonance between their actions and knowledge. This also explains why people tend to change their beliefs in response to new, more compelling sources of information. For example, if an individual discovers that their political views were based on false or distorted data, they may begin adjusting their position to maintain inner harmony. Thus, cognitive dissonance becomes a driving force behind people's search for consistency and resolution of conflicts within their beliefs. Understanding cognitive dissonance also finds wide application in persuasion and manipulation. People engaged in marketing, political campaigning, or propaganda leverage knowledge of cognitive dissonance to craft effective messages. For example, advertising campaigns often present a product or service as the solution to resolve a consumer's internal conflict, which arises from a mismatch between their desires and reality. Emphasis is placed on how purchasing the product or service will set everything right, thus reducing dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a key factor that influences how we perceive and behave. Understanding this mechanism not only helps us better grasp everyday changes in beliefs and decisions, but also enables us to use this knowledge for more effective communication and influence over others. Conclusion. Lessons from cognitive dissonance. Festinger's cognitive dissonance experiment has revealed a fascinating phenomenon that explains how people rationalize their actions and adapt their beliefs to alleviate the psychological discomfort caused by internal contradictions. This research has been a crucial step in understanding how the human mind works, how we perceive the world, and how we strive to maintain cognitive consistency despite emerging conflicts. Festinger's conclusions emphasize that humans are not passive observers of their reality. Instead of confronting contradictions or uncomfortable truths, people actively alter their perceptions of the world and their beliefs in order to preserve inner harmony. This discovery holds immense significance for studying the psychological mechanisms behind decision-making, belief change, and the formation of convictions. For decades, the cognitive dissonance experiment has remained a cornerstone in the development of psychology. Its results not only reinforce the theory of rationalization and cognitive harmony, but also open new avenues in fields such as social psychology, marketing, politics, and even philosophy. We have seen how cognitive dissonance influences our decisions and behavior, helps us explain everyday actions, and even alters our perception of the world. Today, decades after the experiment was conducted, the ideas surrounding cognitive dissonance remain relevant and important. They offer deeper insights into why we often make decisions that may seem illogical or contradictory, and why it is so difficult to change our beliefs, even when new facts or arguments challenge them. This phenomenon uncovers many subtle yet significant aspects of the human psyche and continues to serve as the foundation for further research and practical applications in a variety of fields.